It looks like I might have been wrong. Hey, Sean here from SpeedCubeReview.com. I started cubing over a decade ago, and within a few years I got to pretty much the times I am now. So I've been around 12, 13 seconds for a long while now, and as an adult, I don't really care to get faster. I don't think I am going to get any faster because, I don't have time to practice. I'm mainly doing other stuff, and cubing is just for fun. With that said, I get in almost every single video someone talking about how slow I'm turning. Sometimes it's positive. Sometimes people say, oh wow, you're turning so slow and still getting under 10 seconds? That's incredible. That's encouraging to me, which is what I want to see. And some people just yell at me. And they often yell and say, you need to turn faster. And a lot of people might not realize I can turn faster. I am a professional musician. I have a master's of music. I professionally play the violin and the viola, the electric violin. That's my job much of the time. And so I've been training for over 30 years to move my fingers fast, to look ahead and read music quickly. That's my job. So I'm trained to do that. I know how to do that, but I just don't. So the reason why I don't, and what I've said for about 10 years now, is that going slower, and what I mean by slower is slow enough where you can reduce pausing. That doesn't mean just go excessively slow for no reason. You're trying to reduce pauses, but going that speed so you reduce pauses, but still go a speed that you can continue to probably turn as fast as you can without long breaks. And I've always said that, or for the most part, that that's going to be better than just going as fast as you can, because those breaks are going to be a huge one. And people like Felix Zemdegs have said to me when they look at my solves, like, oh, it's good, you're kind of slowing down here to watch for that, and other people slow down too. So, every so often, I just, for the fun of it, do really fast solves and look to see what happens. And at the end of December, I did 12 solves, and I did them in slow turning, and then I did fast turning, where I go really fast and don't worry about how long the pauses were. So the first thing I did was just an average of 12, like I often do, and did a 12 slow and 12 fast and just saw what the difference was, and usually I just move on from there. And the times were exactly the same. They were identical for both averages of 12, and I was like, ooh, this is a perfect one to check out. And the overall turns per second was actually faster on my fast turning, but the move count was higher. My fast turning had an average of like 8 moves more per solve. So it was about 66 moves versus 58. And I never thought about the move count being such a big factor. And I was like, oh, this is incredible. So the issue isn't so much the pausing, but the move count. Because when you're turning fast, you're not thinking as much. And I'm like, well, I can't just present 12 solves. That's not good data. So all of January, I did nothing but slow and fast turning. And I did it back to back. Sometimes I started with slow and then I went to fast. Sometimes I went to fast, went to slow. Sometimes I just went back and forth every 5, 10 solves or 12 solves. And I did 600 solves for the month of January. And the data is different than I expected. Let's walk through it and find out why slow turning might actually not be what I want to do anymore. So that slow turning is the turning where I can turn at a speed that I can try to reduce pausing as much as possible. I'm still trying to speed solve, I'm just not trying to go as fast as I can. And the fast turning is going at my max TPS that I can turn even if I am pausing. So let's look at some of this data. First off, turns per second. My turns per second on the slow turning was about 4.47, and the fast turning was 4.78. Similar turns per second. Now this is averaging in the pausing as well. So even with the pausing, my fast turning does have a higher TPS. Here's where the data threw me off. My slow turning, average move count, so 300 solves for slow turning, was 61.01 moves. My average move count for fast turning, 61.92. The difference was less than 1 turn. The difference was so close, I can't even count it as a big enough difference, which might change if I do more than 300 solves. So my average for slow turning was 13.64, fast turning was 12.95. That is a bigger difference than I thought. I thought the slow turning was going to be lower than that. And looking at this graph I just did a rolling average of about 35. I wanted something that was somewhat in the middle, not anything super crazy. But you can see the slow turning has a lot more of a consistent solve. Because I was thinking about the solves more, and I wasn't possibly getting really bad OLLs that I could have canceled into or made some mistakes and had to undo something, I was able to be a lot more consistent across the board. Some ranges that I have though, my best solve for the slow turning was 8.5 seconds, and my fastest for the fast turning was 8.13. Now these are just these time ones. I did definitely have a couple 7-second solves in the non-timed ones on QBs that I just did separately, but I'm not counting those because I don't have the data for them. My worst solve on the slow turning was 18.34, and for the fast turning was 19.43. So there is a wider range in the fast turning, which I think we could have expected because it is more wild. It is a little less thought out throughout the solve. And so let's look at recognition time. The recognition time in slow turning was 4.89 seconds. That means all the time I paused before doing the first move of an F12 pair, or OLL, or PLL, while for fast turning it was 5.33. So about half a second difference in my recognition. But my execution is where things change. My execution was about a full second, over a full second faster. So while it was a half second slower recognizing, it was a full second faster executing. So I broke down each individual step. And for inspection, they were both about the same. I spent about the same amount of time, 13 to 14 seconds for both cubes on average. I'm going to just put the chart up instead of reading all these numbers. But for cross, F12 pair 1, 2, and 3, fast turning was faster. Often I planned out the cross plus 1 pair, if not 2 pairs from inspection. So that might account for that. I'm not pausing or thinking too much because I'm just going straight into it. Where it flipped is the slow turning was faster in the 4th pair for F2L and OLL. It's not a lot faster, it's in the 100th of a second, but it was faster. We could say the difference is small enough where they're the same, and if we do, that's unexpected. Because I was expecting to be able to recognize OLL much faster when I'm slow turning, and that wasn't the case. The fact that it wasn't actually slower for PLL was surprising to me. That's where I thought I was going to have the largest gap, because I'm trying to turn OLL as fast as I can, and I'm still able to recognize the same amount. So at the end I'll talk about my thoughts on that, but that was not what I expected. There's one big thing that stuck out to me that I would love your thoughts on. Because as just human beings, we like to see patterns. Nice round numbers like 10 or 20 stand out. And I'm close to sub 10, so whenever I get a sub 10 solve, that's a moment for me. That I'm like, oh, there's a thing that happened that's better than most, that stands out. And during the slow turning, out of the 300 solves, I got a sub 10 solve 1 time. And during the fast turning, it was about a dozen times. I ran the numbers with the standard deviation and finding the z-score and the probability. The z-score for the slow turning was negative 2.44, and the z-score for the fast turning was negative 1.48. Z-score measures how many standard deviations out that would fall. So then we can figure out from there, out of 100 solves, what we might expect. And this is where it got a little bit wild. For the slow turning, the odds of a sub 10 solve from my data set was about 1 in 137. The odds for the fast turning was not 1 in 137. It was 1 in 14. That's such a different number. It stands out so much that if I'm trying to get sub 10 solves, slow turning is not going to cut it. The difference is like 10 times more likely that I'm going to get a sub 10 solve doing fast turning. So I know from this data set that faster turning is going to result in overall faster times with me. But because sub 10 stands out so much, that point is huge. And I'm curious for what everyone else thinks about that. Like if If it was how often would I get a sub 14 solve and it was that different, would that be as impactful to you or just to the general public? Or is it just because it's 10 seconds and that's a big round number, or at least a nice round number? I don't know if it's a big one. So I'm going to continue this journey. I'm not going to continue the comparison. I think I'm going to just focus on fast turning for a while, a month, 2 months, the rest of the year. Few things I'm concerned about. My hands start to hurt when I'm doing fast turning. For this video here, it was so bad I had to stop and take some medicine because it felt like arthritis was coming on. Now, I'm not actually told I have arthritis, so I don't know if that pain is something else, but they say it's not that. What I'm curious with the data, though, is am I going to change my recognition as I get more comfortable with fast solving? My times, my recognition, my execution has been fairly the same for years now. If I only practice fast turning, will my recognition get smaller because I get more used to that kind of turning, or will it be the same? And that's what I want to find out. So, is slow turning bad? It's not bad, but you have to think about what you're trying to figure out. Are you trying to be more consistent? Or are you just trying to get the fastest solve possible? I do enjoy being more consistent. I do like that aspect of it. But it is fun to get sub 10. This has been a fun month of trying out, comparing fast and slow turning. Check out qbeast.com. It's amazing. If you have a Bluetooth puzzle, pretty much all of them, all the major ones, can connect at this point. Totally worth it to go there and use that. Let me know your thoughts on this. The analyzing of the data gave me some very interesting numbers that I was not expecting. And I'm curious your thoughts on how I collected it and your thoughts moving forward of ways I could adjust it or adapt it or what you might do for yourself. Thank you much for watching. Hit like and subscribe for more content like this in the future. And as always, keep following SpeedCube Review for more news and reviews.